thing the other day. They are aware of it, and they will endeavor to not block your view. You may call your next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. Today call is Danny Conyers.
Come forward, be sworn, sir. Face the clerk. Put your left hand on the Bible and raise your right hand.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you God? Please have a seat, state your full name and correct.
Watch your step up, sir.
Do I have to keep this on?
No, sir, you may pull it back.
Okay. Danny Conyers.
Good morning, Mr. Conyers.
Good morning.
Tell the jury a little bit about your occupation.
Retired.
Prior to the retirement, and congratulations on that retirement. But prior to retirement, tell me what you did before.
I started off with South Carolina National Bank as a corporate fraud investigator, and I ended up with Wells Fargo as a financial crimes investigator.
And how many years were you with between South Carolina National and Wells Fargo?
44.
All right, so that went from South Carolina National to Wells Fargo and a couple spots in between.
Yes, sir. There's a couple of Wachovias and First Unions in there.
All right. And before that, were you in law enforcement in some
Yes,
way?
sir. I worked for Richland County Sheriff's Office from 1970 to 76.
All right. And so so tell me a little bit about your duties as you were working with the bank. When I first started off, I did it all, physical security and fraud investigations. You know, I investigated all the crimes against the bank. And as time wore on, did you kind of morph into a different kind of role?
Well, they split it up. We got bigger, and they had people specialized in the physical security, and then we specialized in the investigations department.
All right. And you talked about fraud investigations.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Would ATM use or misuse of ATMs be a part of that
Yes.
department you worked in?
A big part.
All right. So can you explain to the jury a little bit about how when a person accesses an ATM at Wells Fargo, just what the process would be for security or what security measures were in place?
Well, anytime you use a credit card, it's a daily procedure. I mean, there's a system that takes in the time, the date, the location, the amount, and all that. As far as the ATM, we try to keep the lighting, and we pretty well got cameras in all our ATMs now.
Yes, sir.
There are a few that don't have them, but the biggest majority of them all do.
All right. And did you have an opportunity? Let me ask this. When you have that ATM video, does it record?
Yes, sir.
How does it record?
It did 24/7.
All right. So just a continuous recording all
Right.
the time. All right. And as it relates to the paper records of people trying to access ATM
Right.
cards, explain how that part of it works again.
Well, anytime you access it, you know, it prints out, you know, it goes into a database with the time, the date, the amount of the transaction, or what you did, whether you was just checking your balance or making a bank transfer or making a deposit.
Yes, sir. And are those records that are kept in the normal course of business?
Yes, sir.
All right. And those are records that you would have access to based on your employment with Wells Fargo at the time?
Yes, sir.
All right. And more specifically, back in 2019, March of 2019, were you employed by Wells Fargo?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And during that employment, did you have an occasion to become involved in an investigation that dealt with the murder of Samantha Josephson?
Yes, sir.
All right. Can you tell us a little bit about what you remember about your involvement?
I remember the detective calling me and asking me about the you know, was the card used was the card used, and I told him it was used at two locations, one in Sumter and one here in Columbia.
And you were provided a search warrant sometime.
Yes, sir. He provided the search warrant for the photos.
Okay. And pursuant to that search warrant, did you provide certain information? Did you give certain information? To
Yeah,
the
I told him where the transactions took place,
Okay.
because he needed that for the search warrant.
All right.
No, sir, I'm going to show you what's been marked at this point for Estates Exhibit number 335 for identification purposes.
Okay.
Can I show that to you, sir?
Yes.
All right. And what is that?
This is a disc of the transactions that took place at trying to think of the location there. The one in West Wark and the one here in Columbia.
Okay. And did you have a chance, is that that's a disc of the videos?
Yes, sir.
Recording? And did you have an opportunity to review those?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and are those your initials on the back?
Yes, sir.
To show that you came back, viewed them?
Yes, sir.
And let me, if I can have that back,
Yes, sir.
please. Let me also show you what's been marked as States Exhibit number 336. You recognize that?
Yes, sir. It's a time and date report for West Wark and Hampton Hills.
Okay. And you said time and date report.
This is a time and date report for ATM usage.
Okay. And again, that's kept in the normal course of business?
Yes, sir.
I'd like to enter States 335 in evidence, Your Honor.
No objection.
They're admitted without objection. It is admitted without objection.
Okay, and I'd also like to admit States 336 as well.
No objection.
It's admitted.
Thank you. No, sir, what I'm going to show you, and if you'd like to step down, you may, is States Exhibit number 335. And I'll ask you questions while this plays. Is there an audio recording of what happens at these ATM machines?
Audio?
Yes, sir.
No, sir.
All right. So can you explain to us the ATM area that we're talking about and just what you're seeing briefly?
Yeah, that's West Wark Plaza drive-through in Sumter.
And what are the streets that it's closest to in Sumter?
I think the main drag, Broad Street.
Okay.
And then if you're going back towards this way, then it runs into 378 and 521.
Okay, so kind of at that apex of 378, 521 and Broad Street.
Yes.
All right.
That machine has 2 cameras.
All right. And so the camera that we're looking at right now, what would that represent?
Well, it would be the overall view. Or you'd walk up to it and it's a real good camera. That's why you get so much footage.
Okay. Now, as this video plays, it's about a 4-minute video, but since there's no audio, I'm going to continue to talk to you.
That's fine.
Show this. Now, as that video plays, I'm going to show you what's been marked in States Exhibit number 336.
Yes, sir.
All right. So may I hand that to you, sir?
Yes.
All right. Are you able to tell what took place by way of transactions during that time?
Yeah, he attempted to make withdrawals on it, but undoubtedly he didn't have the right PIN number or something.
Okay. How many withdrawals were attempted during that period of time?
2.
And that's the Sumter location?
Yes, sir, I'm just going by this.
Okay. And is there a time that's listed as to when those?
Yes, sir, it's saying 0545.
So 5:45 in the morning?
Yes, sir.
Let's talk about time a little bit. There are occasions when sometimes the ATMs may read in Pacific time.
Right, the biggest majority of them are all on Pacific time. If I remember right, they had put a new machine in this one, and when they set it up, they left it on Eastern time instead of putting it on Pacific.
Yes, sir.
But as you can see, he disguised himself pretty good.
All right. And at this point, he's walking off. Is that
Yes,
correct?
sir. Looks like he parked his car up on Broad Street.
So parked his car on Broad Street, walked back to the car.
Yes, sir.
I'm going to play a second video for you, sir.
Okay.
And I'll ask if you recognize that video in just a moment.
Yes, sir, that's the overhead.
So you talked about possible 2 camera views
Yes, sir.
that will exist. You know, some more, but at least at this location, there are 2 camera views.
Right.
So one was direct on you
Yes, sir.
and the other was overhead.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and it's in color as well. Is there anything that you reckon that looked particularly interesting about this video?
Yeah, one thing that usually I don't spend much time on overhead, but I wanted to make sure the detective seen the shoes this guy had on, or this person had on.
Okay. What's interesting about those shoes based on your view?
Well, you don't see too many people walking up to the ATM with those on. They look like bedroom shoes.
Okay. And again, is that particular transaction captured in the record that you have in
Yes.
front of you?
Yes, sir.
Okay. In fact, it's the same transaction that we
Right.
just spoke about?
It's just a different view.
And again, unsuccessful transaction,
Right,
and it's noted as well on that business record.
right.
Okay, I'm going to move on to the next video. Now you have a record that shows that transactions occurred in the attempted transactions took place in the Columbia area as well.
Right, Hampton Hills.
Okay, explain to us to the best of your ability where Hampton Hills is.
It's right over by, I get all my tech schools mixed up anymore since I moved to Charleston, but I think it's Midland Tech.
Yes, sir.
It's close to there.
Okay, so would that be near the corner of Sumter Highway and Rosewood?
Yes, sir. We got 2 branches, one on Sumter Highway, we call Garner's Ferry branch, and then the Hampton Hills branch.
Okay. So the bottom of that Garner's Ferry Hill.
Yes, sir.
All right. And what do we see here, sir?
The same person, they attempted to use the ATM machine.
And based on the record that you have in front of you, can you tell us how many attempts were made?
Looks like it was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
So 9 attempts.
Yes, sir.
Were they successful or unsuccessful?
Unsuccessful.
And you talked about camera views with the Sumter location when that person tried to use the branch in Sumter.
Yes,
What are the camera angles for Hampton Hills?
we have 2 cameras there also. We have a straight on one like that right there, and then we have an overhead. And this one's black and white.
Okay. And this is a 5-minute video. I don't intend to play the entire
Yes.
video right now. But again, this is a fair and accurate representation of what you turned over to the investigator after you received the search warrant.
Yes,
All right. So I'm going to show you a different camera angle, sir.
okay.
I will attempt to show you a different camera angle, sir. There we go. So Again, can you talk to us about that particular angle of the Hampton Hills branch?
It's the overview camera. If you get and you look, you see the same shoes that really stand out.
And would this reflect the same set of 9 transaction attempts that we just watched?
Yes,
Okay, but just from a different angle.
yes, sir.
All right. And again, color camera?
That one is, yes, sir.
All right.
And the times on here are gonna be Pacific time,
Okay.
which would, they're showing 0347, which would be, I think, 647.
Okay, so adding 3 hours would be
Yeah,
6:47.
add the 3 hours.
All right. So in Sumter, attempting to use an ATM after 5 a.m.
Yes, sir.
and in Columbia, attempting to use an ATM after 6 a.m.
Right.
All right. Both on Sumter Highway.
Yes, sir.
Now, after you provided these videos and provided that report, did that end the,
My part,
yes, sir, your part in this case?
yes, sir.
All right. Well, sir, at this point, that's all the questions that I have. I'm going to pause this video and then please answer any questions that the defense may have for you.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you.
Ms. Pinnock? Yes.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Is it Connors?
Conyers.
Conyers. Good morning. How are you?
Fine.
Good. You were contacted by which investigator?
I think it was McCracken.
McCracken? Okay. And when you spoke to Investigator McCracken, he told you what they were looking for, the information they were looking for?
Right. He gave me the card number and everything.
Yes, sir. He told you the reason why?
Yes, ma'am.
And
At the time, I mean, when I, yeah, I get a lot of different cases, but yeah, he told me.
so you had a conversation with him prior to getting the search warrant, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And then you got a copy of the search warrant,
Yes, ma'am.
4 videos,
Yes, ma'am.
and you delivered videos.
Yes, ma'am.
Did you watch the video prior to returning it over?
Well, I did the video. I mean, I didn't do the actual disc, but yeah, I looked at all. I did all the video,
Okay, so you watched the video
Yes, ma'am.
from the Columbia location,
both locations.
and you can't see who's at the ATM, correct?
What's one more time?
You cannot see who is at the ATM.
No, ma'am.
Okay. You watched the Sumter location video.
Yes, ma'am.
You cannot see who's at the ATM.
No, ma'am.
You testified that the same person was trying to use the card, but you don't know that, do you?
Well,
Do you know if it's the same person who used the card both times?
I can't, well, wearing the same clothes, but as far as being the same person, no.
No, you can't tell. So you're just assuming that it's the same person using the card.
Yes, ma'am.
Begging the question, don't. Thank you. I have no further questions.
So, sir, you were asking if you were assuming that that's the same person using the card, correct? The question that was just asked was,
Right.
you were assuming?
All I can say is, they had on identical clothes on.
Okay. And when you say identical clothes, you're talking about those shoes,
Objection,
those,
Your Honor, misleading.
Don't lead her. Don't lead him.
yes, sir. Thank you. What identical clothing did the person who used the ATM in Sumter have that was identical to the clothing that the person who used the ATM in Columbia had?
Those bedroom shoes,
Okay.
those stood out more than anything.
Thank you, sir. That's
Yeah.
all my questions. All right. That's all I have.
Step down.
Thank you, sir. May step down.
Watch your step down, sir. All right, let me get myself out of here.
Next witness.
State calls Destiny Catino.
Come forward to be sworn. Face the clerk. Place your left hand on the Bible and raise the right one.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this case will be the truth, and no truth, and nothing but the truth to help you God? Please have a seat. State your full name for the record.
Okay, watch your step up. Sit in the chair. State your full name for the record. Come up to the microphone. Let's speak loud.
Destiny Katina.
Good morning, Ms. Catino.
Morning.
I'll ask you to speak up just a little bit more so we can ensure that all of the jurors are able to hear you. All right. And one other thing, and this is not to bug you, but I will need you to give a verbal answer, a yes or a no, because we don't want to guess what you're saying. We want to make sure that we understand that you're saying yes or no.
Okay.
Okay, then you'll have plenty of time to explain your answers. All right? You're not a trade. All right. So tell us how old you are.
I'm 26.
A little bit about your educational background.
I graduated from Irma High School. I went to Fortis College for dental assisting. And that's it.
All right. And are you presently, well, let's a little bit about your work history.
I worked at FedEx. I've worked at Sunoco, driving forklifts. I currently work at Snyder Electric.
And let me ask you this, how long were you at FedEx when you worked there?
I would say 3 years, I want to say.
All right. During the time when you were working at FedEx, did you have an occasion to meet a Nathaniel Rowland?
Yeah, I met him. We met.
All right. And did you come in contact with him frequently when you worked at FedEx?
Before we actually met, no.
After you met, let's talk a little bit about when you met. What took place after you met? Did you have any type of relationship?
Oh yeah, after we met, we were just friends, then we eventually started dating.
Can you tell us about when you started to date?
Like a specific date?
No, just the time period, time frame.
We started dating about, I want to say April 2019, I think.
All right. And if you began dating, let's see, could it have been any time before April 2019?
It could have, yeah. I can't remember this exactly.
But you clearly dated in 2019.
Yeah.
All right. Now, did you have a chance, when you were hanging out to just go places and hang out with him from time to time?
Oh yeah. We've hung out at his family's house, his sister, his mom's house. We've hung out at 5 Points before.
So let's start from 5 Points. Where in 5 Points did you hang out?
We've been to Breakers a couple times. I forgot the name of the other place, but
frequently in 5 Points?
not that many times, but yeah.
And you said you hung out at his sister's house?
Mm-hmm.
What did you do when you went to his sister's house?
Say it again?
What did you do when you went to his sister's house?
Just hung out.
What side of town does she live on?
Off Rosewood.
And so, and do you know where he was living at the time?
With his sister.
And was anyone living with the sister?
Her kids.
And you said that you also had a chance to meet his family.
Yeah.
How did that take place?
Just from hanging out at his sister's house. Then I met his mom.
Where did you meet his mom?
His sister's house.
All right. Did you have a chance to travel with him anywhere?
Yeah, we went to his mom's house.
Where was that?
New Zion. I
So,
think.
I'm sorry, I cut you off.
I want to say it was New Zion. I can't remember the name of it.
But was it his family home?
His mom, dad.
And do you remember how you would get there?
Yeah, take Garner's Ferry, go through Sumter Highway, and straight shot.
Straight shot. And about how long did it take to get there?
I want to say an hour, maybe. Hour.
Who would drive?
He would.
Okay, what kind of car was he driving at the time?
His car, yeah, it was his car, his Impala,
Was it what color was it?
black.
Was it relative? Do you remember? Was it an old Impala?
I don't think so.
Okay, relatively new.
Mhm.
Did you ever have a chance to get behind the wheel of it?
Yeah,
Anything interesting ever happened when you were driving it?
I hit a deer.
Okay, who was with you when you hit the deer?
He was.
Did you ever drive his vehicle without him in it?
Maybe to go to like the corner store, but that's it.
Where was the corner store?
Up the street from his sister's house off Rosewood.
Okay, and together you guys were together and you hit a deer.
Yeah,
Damaged your car pretty good.
the front. Yeah,
And after that, was the car fixed?
yeah, it got fixed.
Okay. And you continue to go back and forth to New Zion with him?
Every now and then, yeah.
Now, was that a place, was it a city like Columbia?
No, it was like the country, honestly.
And how often did you, if you can remember, would you have had a chance to go there?
How often?
Yes.
Not that often. I've probably been about 3 times, 3 or 4.
Now, do you see the person, Mr. Rowland, sitting in the courtroom today?
Yeah,
Can you point him out to us? Okay. Tell us what he's wearing, if you would, please.
with a big button up.
Now, you said you were around him a period of time when y'all were working at FedEx. How did y'all contact one another?
We would text.
And what do you know what kind of phone he had?
Yeah, he had my old Alcatel phone.
Okay. So you gave him a phone?
Yeah, eventually, I gave him a phone so that we could contact each other.
Why did you have to give him a phone?
He didn't have one.
And let me ask you this: in seeing him, you had an opportunity to, like I said, be in his car from time to time.
Yeah.
Did you ever see him with any kind of tools or anything interesting in the car?
The little, it's something you could use to open something, but like,
I'm sorry.
I can't really describe it.
I'd like to show you something that's been marked as State's Exhibit number 225. Is this something that you've seen before?
Not exactly that, but something like that. Yeah.
Something like this in his car?
Yeah,
And you've seen him with something like this?
something like that.
And you said he's had it and he was opening things in the opening
I
package?
mean, yeah, you know, you use it to open something. I mean, that's it.
Now, dressing wise, have you ever seen him wearing head coverings or anything like that?
He would wear a hat, and yeah, I've seen him wear a bandana.
Okay. Any particular kind of bandanas you remember him wearing?
Yeah.
I'm going to show you what's marked as State's Exhibit number 11. Have you seen this before?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, that's it.
Yeah.
And how would you wear this?
Just around his head.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit number 19. You seen these before?
No.
Have you seen shoes like this and wearing slides or anything like that before?
Yeah, but not those.
Okay. Now, did you guys have an occasion to end your relationship?
Say it again.
Did you break up with one another?
Yeah, we did.
Okay. About when did that happen, if you remember?
I don't remember.
Did he keep the phone you gave him?
Yeah.
Court's indulgence. And let me just be clear, you were working at FedEx?
Yeah.
Was he working at FedEx as well?
Yeah.
Okay, so y'all were co-workers at some point in time?
We were.
Gotcha. And that's where you met?
Yeah.
That's all the questions I have at this time, Your Honor.
By the defense. Yes.
Come on.
Excuse me. Do you remember how long you knew Nate before you started dating?
It wasn't long. It wasn't maybe a month before we started dating. Yeah, a month or two.
And you said that you had driven his car
I am.
and you wrecked his car.
Yeah.
But that wreck was in January of 2019, right?
I can't remember.
Okay. And it was in the shop for a while?
Yeah.
Because there was pretty significant damage on it.
Can't hear you, ma'am.
Oh, sorry, you have to answer out loud.
Yeah.
And you also told the investigators when you met with them that you knew that other people had driven Nate's car also, right?
Maybe I know his cousin.
Mm-hmm.
Would maybe go to the store, but not really. No.
No. Okay. You went to his parents' house, you said?
Yeah, I've been before.
To his sister's house?
Yeah.
Y'all would hang out at the house, you'd spend time together. You would go to the 5 Points area, but you said it wasn't that frequent, right? That's
Yeah, not that many times.
Okay. So that was not the normal hangout. Hey, we're gonna go do something. Let's go to 5 Points.
Yeah, no.
And how did you say how long the relationship was?
It was maybe 4 months, I want to say, but it wasn't long.
And during that time, you described him as a sweet person,
Yeah, to me, yeah.
kind-hearted, giving, never gave you.
So,
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Yes, yes,
A giving person.
yes,
If you ever had any concerns, you would have walked away, right?
yeah.
Begging the court's indulgence. And just, do you remember exactly when you gave Nate that phone?
No, I don't.
But y'all would be communicating prior to him having that phone, right?
Yeah.
So he had a different device that you were able to
Yeah.
contact him on. Okay, thank you.
No.
No further questions?
I'm sorry, no further questions. Your Honor.
thank you. Miss, step down. Next witness.
State called Eric Grabsky.
Face the clerk, left hand on the Bible, raise your right.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please have a seat, state your full name for the record.
Thank you. My name is Eric Grabsky.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Could you tell the jury where you are currently employed?
Yes, I work for a company called Invista Forensics. I now work as a digital forensic examiner specializing in cellular location analysis and mobile forensics.
And how long have you been there?
I've been there since May of 2019.
And where were you previously?
Previous to that, I worked for the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, otherwise known as SLED.
And how long did you work for SLED?
I was at SLED for a little over 3 years.
And what did you do at SLED?
At SLED, I was assigned as a special agent to the State Surveillance and Intelligence Unit, which operated as a fugitive apprehension team. So we would get calls from local agencies requesting assistance in apprehending violent felons or people with warrants. And my area of expertise specifically on that team was to track cell phones in real time, as well as map out historical call detail records in relation to major crimes.
Did you receive any training in order to do that?
I did.
What is your training?
I've received over 250 hours of training in pen register trap and trace device training. And I probably should explain what a pen register trap and trace is. We've probably all heard of a wiretap. So a pen register trap and trace is a bit of a scaled down version of a wiretap. So you get a target number, and we initiate a pen register. Basically what's going to happen is we're going to be able to see all the incoming and outgoing phone calls and text messages, but we're not going to be able to hear anything as far as voice conversations or see any text message content. And what this did is it allowed us to analyze the cellular location analysis of a phone in real time, because we would see on the pen register, we would see the towers that were being used, the locations of those towers, as well as date and time and other particulars regarding that. So I've received training in pen register trap and trace device collection and analysis, advanced training in call detail record analysis, wireless communications theory, and since being employed at SLED, I am now a certified telecommunications network specialist, certified wireless analyst, and I've received additional training in that as well.
And have you ever been qualified as an expert in court?
I have
In what field?
cellular location analysis and mobile forensics.
This time, Your Honor, I'd ask that Mr. Grabsky be qualified as an expert in the field of cellular location
Analysis.
analysis. Cellular location analysis, Your Honor.
Says the defense.
No objection.
He's so qualified.
Thank you, Your Honor. So you said a lot of definitions when you were just talking. Can you explain to the jury, how do you get cell phone information? Let's start there.
So I'm going to say call detail records a lot probably, and that's what we refer to as the records that come from the major providers for cell phone companies. So Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile, and Sprint.
And how do you get these records?
I get these records through, when I was at SLED, through legal process. So we would send in a search warrant or a court order to obtain those records.
And what kind of records do you receive?
So we receive call detail records, often in digital format, so Excel, spreadsheets, that kind of thing. And we'll receive basically records of incoming and outgoing calls, text message transactions, internet or data transactions, subscriber information, as well as precision location records. There's several types of call detail records. And that's what we'll receive from the carriers when we make our request.
And are the records you receive the same, whether it's Verizon, AT&T, the provider, or does that matter?
I'm sorry. So the records do differ in not only the way that they are provided, but the way that they are recorded by the provider. So essentially, they're all very similar, but they're provided in different formats, and some carriers may store certain information, whereas another carrier may not store the same information.
And I guess what I'm getting at, do you always get the same information from each provider, or is it different depending on the provider?
It's different depending on the provider.
All right. And so I'm going to draw your attention to this case. How did you become involved in the murder of Samantha Josephson?
I received a call from my lieutenant at the time, inquiring about this case and requesting our assistance.
And what What assistance did they need at that time from you?
They needed cellular location analysis on a known phone number.
And how do you know what phone numbers to get records for?
It just depends. In this case, we received information from investigators and special agents who had already been working the case prior to.
And what information are you given, or are you just given the phone number? Are you told it's to this person or that person, or are you just given the phone number, or does that vary?
It varies, but ultimately we receive information as far as the phone number and who it's associated with, the person that it's associated with.
And what do you mean by associated with?
Meaning who possibly had possession of that phone during a given time period.
So in this case, you got information about some phone numbers, is that correct?
That's correct.
And what did you do based on that?
I obtained search warrants for the call detail records, specifically containing historical cell site location information in order to map out the records and determine where these phones were possibly located for specific time periods.
And were you able to get the information?
I was, yes.
I'm going to start with certain records. I'll show you what's been, well, excuse me. I'm going to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 38 and ask if you recognize it.
Yes.
And what are those?
These are call detail records for 609-658-5123.
And is that one of the phone numbers that was provided to you?
Yes,
And does that exhibit fairly and accurately depict the records that you received?
yes.
Have they been changed in any way?
Not that I can tell, no.
At this time, Your Honor, I ask to introduce State's Exhibit 338 into record, into evidence. Thank you, Your Honor. Now I'm going to show you. Excuse me, 337. I'm going to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 337. Asking, do you recognize this one?
I do.
What is that?
These are RTT records, type of call detail record for 803-566-3692.
And is that a fair and accurate depiction of what you received? Sorry, fair and accurate copy of what you received?
It is.
Has it been changed in any way?
It is not.
At this time, I'd ask to introduce State's Exhibit 337 into evidence. Prior to- Now I'm going to show you what's been marked as 339. And ask if you recognize those.
I do.
And what are those?
These are the same RTT records for that previous number, for the Verizon number.
And do they fair and accurate depict the records you received for this case?
They do.
And have they been changed in any way?
No.
At this time, Your Honor, I ask to introduce State's Exhibit 339 as evidence. Sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. just used what I will say the term of art, RTT. Can you explain to the jury what that is?
Yes. So RTT is what Verizon describes as their precision location records. So as I mentioned before, there are several types of call detail records, one of which is precision location records, right? And Verizon calls them, they use the acronym RTT, which stands for Range to Tower or Real-Time Tool. Essentially what these are records that show tower information regarding the health of their network. So what we're going to see on these records is a date and time of when the phone contacted a tower. The tower then, if it's equipped with one of these tools, will actually time the amount of time that it takes for the signal to get to the phone and then return back to the tower. And when they do that, they estimate a distance that the phone could be from the tower, and it's an estimate. They also include the estimated latitude and longitude of the device. And this is not to track phones or to maintain locations of their subscribers. These records are produced and maintain information regarding how that signal is seen by the actual handset, so by the phone itself. And this is a method for them to oversee the health of their network, because the whole point of all of these networks is for us to continue to subscribe to them, right? They're a business. And so they need to maintain the health of their network so that they can maintain subscribers, they can maintain their customers. And this is a way that they do that, to be able to see basically in real time how the network is interacting with various cell phones.
Now, you said something about the latitude and longitude, and that I believe you said it's not accurate. What do you mean by that?
So along with these, or included in these records, is an estimated latitude and longitude of the device. And there is a confidence level associated with it: high confidence, medium confidence, or low confidence. And again, these are not created to actually determine the location of the device. What they're trying to do is see where various towers signal overlaps, because where that signal overlaps, you're going to get better signal for the device. So that's really what they're looking at. And for purposes of the this report and my testimony today, those estimated latitude and longitudes were not included. But you will see an estimated latitude and longitude in these records, and we just need to make sure that you're aware that those are not what was used today.
And just to be clear, if something says the latitude and longitude is, say, downtown Columbia, does that mean the phone is in Camden?
No, it's again, it's going to be associated with an actual tower. So what we're going to see is the tower that was used for connecting to the network.
Did you prepare a PowerPoint that would help assist you in your testimony today?
I did.
And was that provided to myself and everyone that needed it?
Yes.
You can sit down if that helps. Is this what we were speaking of that you prepared?
Yes.
So this has a lot of information. Can you talk about the background of what this presentation deals with, which numbers?
Yes. So I created a cellular map report.
Speak up.
Sorry.
Or how about this? Switch with me so the poor reporter can hear you better.
Everybody see? So I created a cellular analysis report which maps out the towers that were used by two target phone numbers. That's going to be 803-566-3692, as well as 609-658-5123.
And were you given any information about what the 609 number, who it was associated with?
Yes, I was told that that was associated with Samantha Josephson.
And what about the phone number, the 566-3692?
That was associated with Nathaniel Roll.
In here you have methodology. What is this speaking of?
This is just basically telling you what I just spoke about, which is we conducted analysis on the call detail records and documented where the locations of those towers are, as well as the sector location on those towers.
And what is cell site location?
So cell site location simply means location of a tower. So cell site simply means the site of the cell, and that is how we describe location of the tower.
And you use all of this information to make some determinations that we're going to talk about, is that correct?
That's correct.
So this is a sample, as it says, it's a sample of a 3-sector tower. Can you explain to the jury what is a 3-sector tower?
Yes, so the majority of towers that are used by these networks, and specifically in this report, all the towers that we saw are what we call sectorized. And that's just a fancy way of saying that they're broken up into different sectors so that you're able to determine when you analyze these records, what side of the tower that a phone call could have originated from, or some type of connection to the network could have been from, right? And so when we see these towers in real time, the next time you see a tower and you see that what looks like a kind of a triangular looking rack there at the top, that indicates that the tower is sectorized.
And so does a tower like this, does it project out one way or another, or is it a 360?
It's essentially a 360, but each of those sectors projects out 120 degree beam width, right? And that 120 degree times 3 is 360, which encompasses a circle.
So can you explain to the jury what this means?
Right. So this is like a bird's eye view on a cell site or a cell tower. So if you think of a Mercedes-Benz symbol, the very center of that symbol is going to be where the tower is located. And each of those kind of triangular looking shapes that come out, that span out from that center, represent a sector. And that's how we're able to determine, if the call originated potentially on the north side of the tower or the east side or west or south.
And so again, the first target number is the one associated with Mr. Rowland, is that correct?
That is correct.
And who was his provider?
Verizon Wireless.
Okay, and so what time frame did you analyze?
The evening of March 28th through March 29th.
And what was the second target number?
609-658-5123.
And again, who was this associated with?
Samantha Josephson.
And who was the cell phone provider?
Verizon Wireless.
And again, what were you asked to analyze?
March 28th, 2019 through March 29th, 2019.
So why is this significant, or what information were you given? Let's start there.
I was given information that this incident originated at the Bird Dog, which is a bar in Five Points.
Okay. And you said given information. Were you part of the investigation, or are you just receiving information from different people?
I'm receiving information from investigators.
And what is this?
This is the coordinates of where the body was located.
So this is where it says 33, I believe it's degree 48.472. What is that?
That's the actual coordinates on Earth of where the body was located.
And so is this for lack of a better word, a Google map of that?
Yes, it is.
What is this?
This is a location of interest that I was provided.
And do you know anything about this when you're provided, or are you just told this is an area of interest?
I was told that's an area of interest.
And so 7525 Mountain Brook.
That's correct.
And this is again just an aerial shot?
That's correct.
What is this one?
Another location of interest.
So 802 Hemphill Street was one you were given as a location of interest.
That's correct.
Again, were you given information as to why this was a location of interest, or that it just was?
I believe it was associated with a family member. That's what I remember.
Family member of whom?
Nathaniel Rowland.
What about Memorial Stadium?
I believe this was in reference to some of the GPS coordinates that were extracted from the device originally by Lieutenant Britt Dove. I believe that there was potentially, this may have been an area of interest at the time that this map was created.
And you brought up Britt Dove. Do your talents sort of overlap? Would that be fair to say?
Sure.
And so he was here yesterday and talked about cell phone records. Do you have the same records that he does, or are your records different?
So I had the records and he had the possession of the physical devices. So it's important to understand that that's two separate sources of information, right? You're going to be able to get actual content of text messages, internet activity. You're going to actually see the content of that phone from the physical phone itself. From the provider, from the carrier, from the as far as the records go, we're just going to see basically contact with the towers and incoming and outgoing phone calls and data transactions.
So is it fair to say that the information you receive and the information he gets are not always the same?
That's correct.
This is just another point of interest?
That's correct.
All right. So let's get back to this. So you're analyzing 5663692. What do you get in terms of helping you to analyze that number?
So I looked at all the records that were provided by Verizon when I made my request. And the records that were used for this report are the records that I have here. We have call detail records that I was provided, and specifically I used RTT records that were provided by Verizon, as well as the cell site listing, which is the Carolina tower data that was provided. So Verizon, I should explain this, Verizon, they record the tower number in their records, right? So, they'll say, hey, this number used tower number 1. But they don't really specify, they don't specify at all where tower number 1 is located. So you have to look at their cell site listing, which is a database that says, hey, tower number 1 is located at this latitude and longitude. And that's how we determine where those towers are that were being used by any target phone number.
And to be clear, latitude and longitude is just a way to say the address, basically, because a tower doesn't have an address. Is that
Towers do have addresses, yes. So a tower has an address, but it's more accurate to plot the latitude and longitude because that's going to be the exact point on Earth as to where that tower is located. If you plot an address as the tower, you may have varying degrees of distance as far as where that tower is located and where that address is, because an address is going to be on a main road. But I'm sure all of us have seen towers that are way back in the woods somewhere with, through a little cut or a little trail, and it's going to be more accurate to show that latitude and longitude.
So when this says Carolina's tower data, that's providing you the data for the tower as far as the location.
That's right.
So what does this signify for you?
So this is the RTT explanation form. We include this just so that we can reference it for these purposes. We have a date, we have an access time. Release time is going to be the time that the tower saw that phone leave that tower, basically when it disconnected from that tower. We have a call length, a technology type, dial digits.
And do you get all of this information in the report?
I do.
Okay. This is a continuation of that?
Correct.
Can you explain that to the jury?
Sure. We have various device identifiers, the ESN, the MID. We have
You don't have to explain. What is it?
electronic serial number. The MID is essentially the actual phone number itself.
What is it? But you said it real fast. Say what ESN is again.
ESN is the electronic serial number. So that's going to be the electronic serial number associated with a specific device.
Okay, so that's like the serial number on the phone.
Essentially, yes.
Okay. And I interrupted you. MEID or MIN, are those the same?
They can be. This is going to be just the mobile identifier to the network.
Okay. And so that's another column. What's entry type?
Entry type is going to be where we see if it was originating or if it was incoming. So originating meaning outgoing, and then incoming meaning obviously incoming to the device.
And again, because I'm smart about this, is my 3-year-old. Outgoing is you using the phone to call something or text something out from your phone.
That's correct.
And incoming is somebody, or inbound is somebody sending you or calling you. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And then what's the next column?
The access CBSC, that's going to be essentially the switch specific to the RTT record. So it's a lot of complicated stuff here, but really what it is it's a group of towers that are essentially given a number, and it's by geographic location. So you'll have, like, in this case especially, we have the Columbia switch, and so that's going to be all the towers that Verizon signifies as the greater Columbia area. We'll have the Charleston switch, which is kind of more toward Charleston, toward the coast, and there's various other switches. So this is the identifier that identifies what group of towers corresponds to these records.
And so if, say, something came up with the Charleston tower, you wouldn't be looking at the Columbia tower.
That's right.
And what's access BTS?
This is the actual, the cell site itself. This is the cell site number, which is what we then go reference in the cell site listing as to the location of that.
And does BTS stand for something?
It does base transceiver station, which again is a fancy way of saying cell tower.
And what about access sector?
This is going to be the sector that was used. So as I mentioned earlier, think of the Mercedes-Benz symbol. It's going to signify sector 1, sector 2, or sector 3.
And so all this information is on one long generated report.
That's correct.
Is this still the same thing?
That's
All
correct.
right, so continue. What is this column?
Access distance is going to be the estimated distance from the tower that Verizon estimates that phone to be from the actual tower. The last RF1 is going to be if potentially multiple switches were used. That's going to be your second one if the phone rolls into another switch.
And what's a multiple switch? Again, what does that mean?
So it's just like a tower. If you go from one tower to the next, sometimes we will see the first tower that was used and then the last tower that was used. And this is the same thing for the switch. You might see it go from a switch that has switch number 1, and then you might see that the last switch essentially go to switch number 2.
Now, switching towers, does that mean you're moving?
It can. It's not always indicative of movement, but it can be that you're moving.
And so I interrupt you. Were we here?
The last RF1 BTS again is going to be the last time that tower was used, the last tower that was used during that time transaction.
And what's call location confidence?
So this is going to be in correlation to the estimated latitude and longitude of the device, which is not GPS location information and was not used in this report.
And last two helps.
Call latitude, call longitude. Again, this is that latitude, longitude of the physical device, not the tower, that is estimated by Verizon, which again was not used in this report.
And so you have a little disclaimer here. Is that what you've been talking about?
That's exactly right. This is everything that's provided from Verizon. They are aware that these coordinates can be confused as GPS coordinates. And it's important for anybody who's looking at these records to understand that that is not the case, which again is why they were not used in this report.
But they were provided to you.
Yes, they were provided in these records.
So it's a little hard to see, but what does this signify for 5663692?
These are the RTT records. And what we're seeing is we're seeing a date and time associated with various transactions that are occurring as the device is connected to the network.
So in general, does this mean the device is working?
Yes.
Okay. And so is there anything in specific in this one that you used to reference anything? This goes from March 28th through March 29th.
Yeah, these are the records that I began to analyze.
And what are you looking for in this particular record?
So specifically in all of these records, what I'm looking for is the actual tower number. And that's going to be signified in this column right here where you see that number 8. That is going to be the access BTS. It's going to be the tower that was used. And then I'm looking at the sector, which is going to be the very next column over, which in this on this slide you can see is sector number 1. I'm not looking at the latitude and longitude of the device, and then I'm also looking at the dial digits column as well.
What does that mean? The dial
So
digits column?
#77. So dial digits is going to show you if there was a call associated with any of these transactions, right? So we access cellular networks for really 3 main reasons: calls, text messages, and data. Data refers to our internet plan, right? And that's how our providers these days are making more money, right? They used to be charging 10 cents a text, but they wouldn't make any money if they tried that now because no one would be willing to pay that much, right? So they put more emphasis on data. So they're now starting to track and make sure that they keep tabs, obviously, when data transactions occur. So specifically in these records, what we're seeing is #77 being used. That is simply Verizon's code for a data transaction occurring on their network.
And we have talked about this, but can a data transaction occur if, let's say, your phone has not been paid for and so the bill it's off?
It's not likely, no.
What is there any other way to access data if you're not paying on your plan with Verizon?
I don't know.
What about this column from March 29th? Are these times accurate?
Yes,
So it starts at 0:40 and this one ends at 4:10.
that's right.
What does this mean?
That's from 12:40 a.m. to 4:10 a.m. And these are the transactions that are occurring that we're seeing, basically the towers that are being used by this phone to access the network.
So what does this mean? The phone is being used?
It means the phone that the phone is accessing the cellular network.
And there's got various times. So at 2:06 it's using it,
Right,
and at 2:22
that's right.
and 2:38.
Right.
And can you tell on this where those locations are at that time?
I cannot.
Not with this particular.
Right, I have to join this with the cell site listing to determine where those specific tower numbers are located.
And at 3:05
3 to 5, yes,
and then 3:20,
yes,
3:39,
correct,
3:55,
correct,
4:10.
correct.
Phone is being used in some manner.
In some manner, it is accessing the network for specifically for data connection.
And then you have, this is more of the same,
Correct.
and for at 413, 415, 417, 426, 445, 451, 452, 501, phones being used.
Correct. And what we see here is actually this change from the Columbia switch to the Charleston switch, which means that the phone moved from one large geographic area of networks or towers to another switch, right? Another geographic area where more Verizon towers are located.
And how do you know that? Can you
I
tell that on this, or is that on another report?
both. So you can tell specifically by this access number right here, the 602, the CSBSE. That's going to show you that identifier. But also just simply from, obtaining those records from Verizon, we'll be able to see what switches were being used.
So I'm gonna go back. You said it switched from 602. So at 410, where this is the column,
That's right.
and then it switches at some point.
That's right. We see it just a number change. That's right.
And then this is just more of the same.
That's right. And then what we see is that the phone went from the Columbia switch to the Charleston switch, and then as the time continued, it went back to the device was using towers that are associated with the Columbia switch.
Can you tell on here when it went back to the Columbia switch, or is that in a different report?
No, well, yeah. So it looks like at about, I can't tell. I think about 410 is when it came back to the Columbia switch.
Okay.
If I remember correctly.
And is it fair to say they're large? The tower range is large, so at some point you could not be in Columbia but still be on the Columbia tower switch.
Potentially, yes.
Right, and then this is still more of the same.
That's correct. Just these are all the records that were used to display what.
So on March 29th at 10:20, when the phone is being accessed, is that of the Columbia switch?
It appears so, yes.
So explain to the jury what this map is an example of.
So this map is an example of how we're going to see where the device was located and what towers were being used by this device. And specifically, I shouldn't say where the device was located. I should say what towers were being used by the device, right?
So explain, okay, so you have locations of interest. What do those mean again?
So those are the locations of interest that we discussed previously, various areas of interest that were pertinent to the case. And then we have a tower that is being used by the phone is going to show in this red sector symbol here. And what that is that where those two lines open up, that's going to be facing the direction for where that phone accessed the network, right? So in here, we see the sectors kind of facing in a northeasterly direction. That means that the phone would have been somewhere within the radio range of that tower, tower number 8, as well as that sector in that northeasterly direction.
So when we see something like this, just to make sure we all understand, does that mean the person or the phone being used has to be on this side or this side?
More than likely, it's going to be on that northeastern side. Now, of course, the way that radio frequency propagates, it doesn't span out in straight lines. It really more looks like a block. But this is the best way that we're able to display this information without making it entirely confusing. We don't have coverage maps that were provided by the providers. They don't provide any kind of coverage map or anything like that. So this is how we display. So it's possible that the phone may be a little on the one side of a sector or a little on the other side of the sector where some of those sectors actually bleed over.
And you have here that tower not utilized.
That's
How
right.
do you know for sure that this tower is not being utilized based on what you just said?
That's right, because when we look through those records, as I mentioned before, we look and see what towers being utilized, right? So what towers being accessed. The network is not going to record towers that are not being accessed, right? It's only going to show, hey, tower number 1, tower number 2 was accessed. But in our cell site listing, we also see the surrounding areas of other towers, which helps us develop a good mindset of where that call could have possibly been and how many other towers may be overlapping in the geographic area. So it's important to see, or to at least to display towers that aren't being used versus the tower that is being used, in order to make sure that we all can understand that one tower doesn't just service all of Columbia, right? But if you only show one tower that's being used in the middle of Columbia, you might think, okay, that's the only cell tower in Columbia, right?
So we're going to go to specifics. So this is, again, the number associated with Mr. Rowland, 5663692, correct?
Correct.
And so you have here that at 8/1954 through 1:33 a.m., what tower is his phone accessing?
Tower number 8.
And you have, where is 7525 Mountain Brook in relation to that tower?
Northeast.
Would it be in range of that tower?
I believe so, yes.
And that's from 8/19 on March 28th through to March 29th, 1:33.
At 1:33 a.m.
And then it, at a different, it moves, would that be fair to say? The phone at some point moves?
Yes, the phone does move.
And what towers is it now accessing?
It's now accessing tower, I believe it's tower 547 and tower 530.
All right, I'm gonna be specific. So at 150 through 151, it is accessing tower 530.
That's correct.
And this tower is this one that goes this way towards, and Bird Dog is in the middle of that?
Yes, so these two towers are being used. This tower 530, the sector 3 is facing west, which in relation to that tower, the Bird Dog is west of that tower. And then we have tower 547 at 2:06 a.m. In the sector there, sector number 2 is facing sort of in a easterly direction, which again would face the Bird Dog. Bar.
So it goes from this tower to this tower in the from 150 to 206. So however much time that is, 10 minutes or so.
That's right.
And then the next time it utilizes, or what is this showing?
This is just a little bit closer of where the Bird Dog is situated between these towers that are in sectors that are being used by 3692.
And this is the number associated with Nathaniel Road.
Correct.
What does this show?
This is, again, you see tower 547 and 530 being used, the last tower contact at 547 at 2:06 a.m. And then we see a new tower being used, tower 552, sector 1 at 2:22 a.m.
And that's here facing Fort Jackson, North Beltline, all of that area.
That's correct.
Okay, and that's at 222. So it has moved from Bird Dog to this way.
Yes.
And what is this map?
This is, again, a continuation. So as time is progressing, we're seeing that at 222, the one that we just mentioned is sort of facing Fort Jackson, that area. And then we see a tower at 238, between 238 and 3:05 a.m. Tower 539, sector 1 is the only tower that's being used during that time period.
Okay, and you have some locations here, Hemphill Street. Are these points of interest like we talked about before?
Yes.
Okay, and are they within the cell service site?
It would be my opinion, yes.
And again, what does this show?
Again, this is going to show continuation. So we have that tower 539 where we left off from the last slide, from 2:38 a.m. to 3:05. And then we have tower number 8 being used, which is further east, at 3:28.
And so it goes from somewhere in this sector, the phone is being used, still in Columbia, at 320 to moving away, going this towards, past 77 towards this way, towards 222 is the highway, is where it's starting to access. Is that correct?
That's right.
And then this is the same number that's associated with Mr. Rowland, correct?
Correct.
And here's where we left off, 320, that correct?
Correct.
And where are we now?
The next one after 320, the next transaction that we see is at 3:39 a.m. And that is on tower 513 in sector 2.
And this is heading out towards Sumter.
Yeah, it's in an east direction from Columbia.
And the next slide, this is where we stopped, correct?
That's right.
So 339 is on this tower going down, and it says Garner's Ferry, so heading out. Is that correct?
Yes, east of Columbia.
All right, and then the next time it hits is 355. Where is that? Your Honor. Just let it go. Testifying.
And don't leave the witness.
Where is that?
So the next thing that we see is at 3:55 a.m. We have a tower access. This tower number 563, sector 3, which is again more towards the Sumter area.
And what is here that you've got listed as, just so the jury has an idea of where this is?
Shaw Air Force Base. Is that what you're pointing to? Okay.
So where are we now?
So now this is a tower that's being accessed on the east side of Sumter. Specifically, it looks like it's in the area of East Sumter. This is going to be at 4:10 and 50 seconds, and then 4:10 and 56 seconds.
And this looks a little different than some of the others. Is it different?
It is. So we had 2 sectors being used within a short time span. So I highlighted both sectors in this. So the sector that is pointing in the south direction, pointing down, that's going to be used at 4:10, 50 seconds. And then the sector 1 is used at 4:10, 56 seconds. So 6 seconds later, which indicates that, the sector changed.
And what do you have here, this pin?
This is where the latitude of where the body was located.
And so what does this signify?
Again, this is a progression of time. We see, again, those 410 transactions that I just spoke of in the previous slide. And then we have the very next following transaction, which is at 4:13 a.m., which it appears that this tower is in a southeasterly direction from tower number 40 up near East Sumter.
And which phone is this associated with again?
This is 803-566-3692.
And who's that phone associated with?
Nathaniel Roller.
And again, where is the body located in relation to the tower?
This tower, 1702, is the body's located to the east of that tower.
And so what does this signify?
Again, another progression in time. So we see at 4:15 a.m., tower 1722 is being used, and then at 4:13 a.m. here we have 1702, and then at 1722 at 4:15 we have that tower being used as well.
And can you still see the body located on this map where the body was found?
I can see, yes, the latitude and longitude is here in the middle where that body was located.
And what does this slide show?
This shows at 4:17 we had a sector change on 1722. It's facing in a south direction. And then at 4:26:03 a.m. we have two transactions that occur on a tower south of there, and the sector is facing in a northeasterly direction, as you can see at that bottom symbol there.
And in your expert opinion, if someone is here where the body is located, could they access this tower?
It's possible.
Next slide.
So the next one we see are two towers that are located just north of New Zion. They possibly are included in New Zion. It looks like near the Turbeville area. This is going to be tower 1722 and tower 1726. We had a transaction occur 17 seconds apart. So we had 1726 is accessed at 4:45:02, 2 seconds in the morning. And then 1722, that tower on the left there, was accessed at 4:45:19.
And again, which phone is this associated? Who is this phone associated with?
Nathaniel Roller.
And again, what does this do? You've got some circles now. Explain that to the jury, please.
So this is the distance to tower measurements that I spoke of earlier. So we're not using latitude and longitude, the estimated latitude and longitude. What we saw for those same two transactions that we just saw on the previous slide that are 17 seconds apart, those RTT records indicate an estimated distance from the tower that handset is. And so in my experience at SLED, this is a technique that we would use in real time when we are tracking phones in real time. We would look at the RTT records and we would try to find where two separate towers had where the phone accessed two separate towers within a short amount of time. And if we got distance to tower measurement readings from those towers, we would draw those out and see where they overlapped. And that really aided, our investigations and helped narrow down a search of where we were going to locate that phone. Because as you can see here, these towers can cover massive amounts of distance. And so it can be very time consuming to attempt to locate a phone when you're just driving around in circles in the middle of the woods, right?
So in this case, you have the two circles coming together. What does that signify in this case?
That just signifies the estimated distance to tower that these towers were seeing that device.
And you have this here. What does that signify?
That signifies the location of the body.
Is it within the circles or outside of the circles?
It's hard to tell. It's just around where those distance to towers overlap.
So it's where they overlap.
Near it.
All right. And what does this signify?
This signifies another tower that was used on the south side of where that body was located at 4:51 a.m.
And what does this signify? Excuse me.
This signifies additional towers that are being used. So it's important to understand that we may be seeing towers kind of surrounding this area being used, and it's likely because this area is being covered by multiple towers. Multiple sectors are overlapping in this area.
And in your expert opinion, does that mean the device is somewhere in this area?
Yes,
Not in downtown Columbia?
correct.
And so at 5:01 and 4:52, what does this signify?
This signifies, so 4:52, again, we have tower 1726, and that sector is facing south. And then at 5:01, we have a tower to the west, just to the west, that's 1702. That's sector number 1. Again, that's sort of facing that general area where 1726 is, so it's possible that the phone is between where those two sectors are opening up.
And this is again the phone associated with whom?
Nathaniel Road.
And what does this signify?
So now it looks like the phone is potentially traveling back west. So we have a tower here at tower 1702 being used at 501. And then we have tower number 40, which is back toward East Sumter at 512 a.m.
And so again, you have this 3 line. What does that signify?
Those signifies the sectors of the towers that specific tower that's being used.
And then what does this signify?
Again, we see tower number 40 is being used at 5:21 a.m. And that's going to be facing toward the west side of East Sumter. And then at 5:27, it looks like 5:45, we have tower transactions that occur on tower 566, which is much closer to the Sumter area.
And you have here this location of interest, 1119 Broad Street. What is that?
Honestly, I do not recall what that is. It's a location of interest that was provided.
That's what I meant. It's a location of interest.
It is
And this is, I think you said this, but this is Broad Street where?
in Sumter.
At 545?
Yes,
And that's again whose phone?
it's associated with Nathaniel Road.
What does this map show?
This again shows more progression in time in the towers that are being used at 6 a.m. and then 6:16. And as you can see, at 6 a.m. we have 2 towers that are being used around the Shaw Air Force Base area, and then at 6:16 we have a tower being used west of that location.
So earlier we saw something similar. Would that be fair to say, going the other way?
Potentially, yeah.
And then now at 616, where is this? What is
This is west of Sumter,
And where is Columbia in reference to this?
west.
And what does this signify?
This shows towers that are being used between 6:31 a.m. and 7:08 a.m. And this is appears to be on, again, back toward the east side of Columbia.
And you have here, what's this address?
4800 Garners Ferry Road,
And what time is that tower near there being accessed?
6:52 a.m.
And again, whose phone is this associated with?
associated with Nathaniel Road.
What does this signify?
Again, continuation. Actually, I think this is just a zoomed in version of that last slide. And we see the transaction occurring at 6:31 a.m. and then 6:52 a.m.
And again, it says, where's the location of interest?
4800 Garners Ferry Road.
And what does this show?
This is showing these towers and sectors that are being used between 7:08 a.m. and 7:24 a.m.
And where are we in reference to? Are we in Columbia now, or where are we with these towers?
Yes, these towers are in Columbia, the Columbia area.
And at these times, where are we?
This is transactions occurring at 7:41 a.m., 8:15 a.m., and 8:31 a.m.
And are we, again, where are we in Columbia or Sumter? Where
This
are we?
is the Columbia area.
And again, what do these towers mean in terms of the phone is accessing these towers? Where's the phone?
That's right. I can't tell you exactly where the phone is, but the phone is in the area within radio range of these towers that are being shown.
And what about this photograph?
This is where the phone is between the hours of 8:52 a.m. and 10:22 a.m. And again, I shouldn't say where the phone is. This is the tower and sector that are being used by this device during that time period.
And again, you have this, what address is this?
7525 Mountain Brook Drive.
And this is the phone associated with him?
The phone is associated with Nathaniel Roll.
All right, so now, what is it, why did you put this slide in?
This is the phone number. I believe that's not the correct phone number that was associated with this one. We'll see. Go to the next one. We have a Volte report. That's right.
That's right, so what's the Volte report?
So the Volte report is the voice over LTE. So Verizon records their voice calls in several different protocols, right? We have 3G calls, which we're pretty much all familiar with 3G, and LTE. And all they do is they provide 2 different documents. One to say, hey, this occurred, this was a 3G call versus this was an LTE call. And we just call it a Volte call, voice over LTE.
And when we're calling on our phones, can we tell the difference between those two things?
Not necessarily, no.
All right, so what does it signify the difference to you?
It really isn't much of a difference. It's just in the way that Verizon records these calls.
And so what does this mean for you? You have Columbia switched. What does that mean again?
So this is going to be the area of towers that cover Columbia.
And so again, same map example.
That's right.
And so this, we've now switched phones. Whose phone is this?
This is 609-658-5123.
And who is this phone associated with?
This, I believe, is associated with Samantha Josephson.
Okay. So here, and why did you just change the color in green, or what does green signify to you?
It doesn't signify anything. It's just a way to be able to tell what's on the screen.
Okay. And so at these times, from 106 to 154, and then these times, what do they signify to you?
These are the towers that are being used during that time period by 609-658-5123.
And where is Bird Dog in reference to those towers?
Bird Dog is situated kind of very close to, kind of between those towers.
Could you access those towers if you were at Bird Dog or in that area?
For sure, that sector here, the tower here that we're seeing down here, 547, absolutely.
And then we move on to the next, at 210, 214, where is that?
These are calls that are occurring. We have tower 547, sector 2 being used here on the left. Then toward the right there, we have tower 142, sector 1 being used at 214.
And you just said calls. Do we know that they're calls for sure, or is the phone just accessing the towers?
No, these were calls.
Okay. And at what time?
2:10 a.m. and 2:14 a.m.
And what towers are they accessing?
Tower 547 here at 2:10 a.m. and tower 142 at 2:14 a.m.
That's the last one. You can have a seat. So based on what you've given to the jury and all of the records that you give, I want to try to break that down a little bit. Ms. Josephson's phone used towers at Bird Dog in downtown Columbia. Is that what we just saw?
Yes, around the Bird Dog area.
And at that same time, what towers were Mr. Rowland's phone accessing, or the phone associated with Mr. Rowland?
Are you talking about during that two?
Yes, sir.
Yes, the similar towers in a similar area.
And when her phone moved to a different area, did his phone also track in a different area?
I believe so, it did.
And you can refer to your notes if you need to. All right, and at some point, his phone tracks, or his phone moves to New Zion.
The phone associated with Nathaniel Rowland does appear to travel to the area of New Zion, yes.
And were you able to get any information on Ms. Josephson's phone at that time?
The time period of when the phone associated with Nathaniel Rowland was in New Zion?
Correct.
No, there was no activity on that device, on the device associated with Samantha Josephson.
Does that mean the phone wasn't working, or what does that signify?
Well, it just signifies to me that the phone is not accessing the network. So you're not going to see anything in those records if the phone isn't accessing the network. And so the phone could be just in a basement somewhere, not getting good signal. It could be turned off. There's various reasons as to why it would not be accessing the network.
And were those the only two phones records you were asked to get, those two phone numbers?
No,
Was it more than one phone?
there was.
Okay, multiple?
Yes.
All right, and I'm just going to go over one of those with you. Baby, for the milk. Were you given a number associated with Xavier McFadden?
Yes.
And can you just tell the jury, where did his phone show him being at 11:34, 1 o'clock, and at 1 o'clock a.m. on March 29th?
I believe it was a tower in and around the Turbeville area, just north of Turbeville, I believe, if I recall.
So not in downtown Columbia.
No.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Cross-examination.
Thanks very much, Your Honor. May it please the court.
Good morning.
Okay, so I've learned a lot. Okay, so I want to kind of go back just a little bit. So the map that we just saw on this big screen here, you prepared that. That's one you prepared just recently, right?
Yes, originally when I was at SLED, I prepared that and then I combined two of those maps to kind of make it a little more organized.
You updated this one.
Yeah, I combined the two. Yes, that's right.
Okay. Because I think originally we had a map that was showing Miss Josephson's phone or using towers near the bird dog around 6 o'clock that morning.
Yes, so upon further examination, it was determined that so the software that we use can sometimes not ingest some of these records correctly. So I determined that the timestamp was actually incorrect because in those Volte records, as we mentioned, one of the issues that we have is that some of those timestamps are recorded in local time and some of them are recorded in GMT time. So you have to convert for the local time for those specific transactions.
And so that's what we've done now.
That's right.
We've corrected that.
Correct.
Okay. Now I want, and the records you used for your cellular analysis in this case, you testified you used they're not the same records for each phone.
That's right.
It's the same provider,
Correct.
but different records.
Correct.
So for the phone associated with Nathaniel Rowland, we have more records, right? Or different type of records.
Yes.
And it's the RTT information that you're using for that cellular analysis.
Correct.
For the phone associated with Miss Josephson, using the Vol LTE.
That's right.
And those are that indicates calls,
Correct.
right? And so would that indicate calls outgoing only or incoming calls?
It would indicate both, but I'd have to look at the record, refer to the records to determine at what time.
So
an
just
incoming call
any
occurred.
sort of call activity,
That's right.
that's going to show up on that report.
That's correct.
The one associated with the phone and the cellular analysis you did on Samantha Josephson
That's
for
right.
that phone number. And the RTT, that specific data with coming from Verizon, that's information that's not stored for a long period of time,
You're right.
right? And so in this case, the information related to the phone associated with Mr. Rowland, for those dates was received a lot sooner to you from Verizon, or was requested sooner, I suppose.
I believe so. I don't recall the date and time in
Okay.
which I had requested either.
And that information would have been requested of Ms. Josephson's phone.
I believe it was.
Okay. But they didn't provide that to you.
I don't recall, honestly. I think they did, but there may not have been activity during those times,
Okay.
and specifically in those RTT records.
And so specifically here today, the cellular analysis that you provided to the jury is for the Verizon records for the 566-3692 phone.
That's right.
And that is not for any other phones associated with Mr. Rowland.
Correct.
And you weren't asked to map any phones connected to Maria Howard in this case.
I believe I was, yes.
And that was a phone that eventually, I think, was determined maybe belonged to her mother.
That's what I was told recently, yes.
So not her actual cell phone. The number associated with her cell phone.
That was the information that I was working with at the time, that was the number associated with that person.
Okay. You weren't asked to do a cellular analysis on any additional information obtained about Maria Howard.
Correct.
In this case specifically, did you perform any drive test analysis to study and determine the range or strength of the towers?
No.
Because we use a lot of words on your testimony about, it's an estimate, right? Or possibly, right?
That's right.
Potentially. But not accurate, not absolutely accurate, right?
That's right.
And I think yesterday we heard from Lieutenant Dove that some phones, when you do an extraction, you can have GPS locations
Right.
associated with the phone,
That's correct.
location information, if that service is turned on the phone.
Correct.
And that is generally more accurate as far as locations, right?
Right.
The information that we receive from phone companies related to towers is a best estimate, right? Or an
Yes.
estimate.
Well, right. What we're seeing is the tower and sector that are being used. So we know that the device has to be within radio range of those towers in order for those to show in the records.
And so these are theoretical locations of where a device may be at that time,
No, we're looking at general locations.
general locations.
That's right. So
what's-
it's not theoretical that the device could have been there. The device was in those areas, but as far as specifically like what street corner that device was on, we can't say for sure what street corner that device was on based on those tower and sector locations. That's correct.
And the information that we discussed in here was from a time frame generally from about, I think the first point was maybe around 8:30, 9 o'clock on March 28th.
I
Is that
think so.
right? And then the last one being about 10:30 on March 29th.
I believe that sounds right.
Okay. And this is the information provided from Verizon related to the phone associated with Mr. Rowland. This doesn't indicate any sort of text message being sent,
Correct.
any calls being made.
Correct.
We're strictly talking about data being used.
Correct.
And I don't think we talked on direct about that, what exactly that means. Is that just the phone itself, just making some sort of contact with the tower, or is there something on the phone being used?
So there has to be some sort of data connections, in order for us to see those times and those towers being used. So, but I can't tell you if someone was actively, using that phone at that time. You can have data running in the background of your phone, as we all know, email updates or Facebook updates, that kind of thing. You could be streaming music, obviously, but not actively texting or calling someone. And when you're streaming music and you're driving around town, obviously you're going to be using the towers, the cellular network, and those are going to show as data connections.
And again, I believe, and you were very careful to say, this is not information related to the person, but to the device itself, right?
That's correct.
You can't put that phone with a specific person.
That is correct.
Beg the court's indulgence. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. No further questions.
Read and write.
All right, Eric. Would it help if I handed you a copy of your PowerPoint? I want to ask you some questions about it without pulling it all back up.
Yes.
And just so everyone knows, can you look at that and make sure what that is?
This is the cellular analysis report that we just walked through on the.
And just to be clear, on the page where it shows where the number associated with Worldlet was on March 29th at 2 o'clock? Can you look at that page for me?
Yes.
Where is the phone associated with Nathaniel Rowland being used? What tower is it accessing?
The towers are showing in and around the area of 5 Points, Shandon, that part of the area in Columbia.
And flipping to where the number associated with Samantha Josephson phone, where was it accessing towers at that same time? It's outside the scope. Believe it, Cross, you started getting into whether the locations were correct. I'm just clarifying so that I can ask you follow.
Objections overruled.
So you may answer, where was her phone?
So her phone, between the hours of 1:06 a.m. and 2:04 a.m., we're in a similar area, using towers in a similar area.
And again, she asked you about general location. What did you mean by the general location?
Right, so all I can tell you is that, this is the tower in the sector that's being used, and that sector is facing a general area. Based on these records, I can't tell you again what exact street corner, that phone is on. I can just tell you that an area is consistent with being in, the coverage range of that tower.
And what area was he consistently using, the phone consistently using at 4 o'clock? And I believe it was 5. You have those pages, so I don't.
For the 803-566 number?
Yes, sir.
So we didn't have anything at 4 o'clock.
5 o'clock, 4:30, that time.
4:10, we have a tower that's located near East Sumter.
And when is the next time?
Let's see, 4:13 a.m.
And where's it accessing?
It's a little further east of East Sumter, near Sardinia.
Next one? Well, let's just skip to around 4:45.
Uh, 4:45, we have 2 towers that are in the New Zion area.
And then at 5:45, what tower is the location of his phone access?
Five 45,
Yes, sir.
we have a tower that is located just north of Sumter, right in that Sumter area.
And then at 6:45 or so?
So we don't have anything at 6:45. We have 6:31, 6:52, and 7:08.
And what time are those? I mean, where are those? I'm sorry.
Those are located in Columbia.
And that's consistent with where the phone is accessing towers, correct?
Correct.
Nothing else, Ron?
Think further.
Your Honor, thank you.
Thank you, sir. You may step down.
Watch your step down, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen, we'll take a 15-minute break at this time. Please do not discuss the case. All right, thank you. Your next witness, please.
Your Honor, the state calls Agent Kimmy Mears. Forward, be sworn. Face the clerk. Left hand on the Bible, raise the right one.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you about to give this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? I do. Please have a seat, state your full name for the record.
Step up.
My name is Kimberly Mears. Last name is spelled Mears.
Agent Mears, good morning.
Hi.
Can you tell this jury who you are, where you're employed, and what you do?
I am employed by the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, which is commonly known as SLED, and I am a forensic scientist in the latent print department.
How long have you been employed at SLED?
I've been with SLED since 2007, specifically with the latent print department since 2011.
And prior to that, prior to 2007, did you have any additional work, experience, training, education?
Just college.
Okay. And can you talk about some of your training as it pertains to latent prints?
Once I was hired by the latent print department, I completed their in-house training program, which typically lasts about a year. I also completed the latent print examiner training program sponsored by the National Institute of Justice, which lasted about 10 weeks. Both of those training programs have modules and courses that cover all aspects of fingerprint work, all the way from the history of fingerprints, the growth of fingerprints, to doing comparisons and writing reports.
Do you regularly participate in trainings and continuing education?
Yes, I regularly attend various workshops, conferences, and courses as they become available.
Have you testified in court before?
I have.
And have you been qualified as an expert?
Yes, I have, about 25 times.
All right. And what have you been qualified as an expert in?
The wording changes a little bit. Fingerprint analysis and comparisons, fingerprint examination, something along those lines.
All right, thank you. Your Honor, at this time, the state would offer Agent Mears as an expert in fingerprint analysis and comparison.
No objection, Your Honor.
It's so qualified.
Thank you, Your Honor. All right, Agent Mears, let's start with the obvious question. What is a latent print?
So first, let me explain what a fingerprint is. If you look at the palm side of your hand, you will see tiny little raised lines on your skin. Those are called ridges. And on your fingertips, those ridges form specific patterns, either arches, loops, or whorls. On the joints of your fingers and the palm of your hand, they have a specific ridge flow unique to the area of the hand. This is also true for your toes and the skin on the bottoms of your feet. Within the overall pattern or ridge flow, the ridges are not just running uniformly. One ridge may fork into two, which is called a bifurcation. One ridge may just stop, which is known as an ending ridge, or a ridge may be formed just in the shape of a dot. Those are called ridge characteristics. And those ridge characteristics within the overall pattern or flow make up your print. The word latent means hidden or invisible, meaning it needs some form of development to be seen. So those ridges are lined with sweat pores. Throughout the day, you exude sweat, you touch greasy foods or oily items, and that moisture accumulates on your ridges. When you go to touch an object, that moisture is transferred from your skin to that surface, corresponding to the ridges on your skin.
So you mentioned touching an object and transferring that material. Is there a print that is left behind, so to speak, every time you touch something?
No, there's not. Leaving a portion of a print or leaving a comparison quality print is a chance event that depends on the person themselves. how dry their skin may be, how rough the skin might be, depends on the surface being touched, how textured or if it's fabric or something hard. And it also depends on the environment that that object is in. If it's outside in the direct sun, if it has been rained on or been washed, those would all affect leaving a print.
All right. Are you able to determine when you are provided with a latent print to examine? Are you able to determine the time frame in which that print was left in whatever location it was found upon?
No, we are not.
So in other words, you can't timestamp a print.
If a print is found on a countertop and it is known that that countertop had just been thoroughly washed, that might help. But generally, no, we cannot age a fingerprint.
Okay. So what is your process for taking items of evidence in a case and making comparisons among them?
First, I do an inventory of my evidence, make sure I have what I'm supposed to have. I then label the evidence with the SLED lab number, the item number, and my initials. And I then go forward to determine if any print is comparison quality, meaning if there's enough information there to compare with a known fingerprint of an individual to then compare to determine if the individual made that print, did not make that print, or if I'm unable to tell for some reason.
Were you provided with a number of items of evidence in the case at hand?
Yes, I was.
Some of those were known standards, correct?
Correct.
And some of those were latent prints lifted from other locations and other items of evidence throughout the case. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
All right. I want to show you what's been marked previously as State's Exhibit 6 for identification only, and we take a look at that.
Okay.
Do you recognize that?
Yes, I do.
What do you recognize that to be?
These are the known fingerprints of Nathaniel Rowland, and they are marked with my initials and the SLED lab number and the item number.
And did you receive those fingerprints in the proper chain of custody?
Yes, I did.
And did you then use them in order to make comparisons in this case?
Yes, I did.
All right, this time the state will move to introduce State's Exhibit number 6 into evidence.
Let's put so much for our previous objections, Your Honor.
It is admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor. All right, now let's talk a little bit about the comparison process. Tell the jury a little bit about how you compare a latent to a known standard.
The ridge characteristics, the ridge endings, the bifurcations, and the dots within the overall pattern type or within the overall ridge flow are what I'm looking at to determine if there's enough information there to compare. I look at those characteristics and their relationship to each other within the latent or the unknown print and look for them in the known print as well, going throughout the print looking for similarities of the ridge characteristics or any disagreement.
Once you've done that with a particular comparison, what are the types of conclusions that you could reach on a given item?
So the overall method we use for doing comparisons is called ACE-V. ACE standing for analysis, comparison, and evaluation, the V standing for verification. The analysis portion is where I look at a print to determine, is this from ridge detailed skin? Is this from a end joint of a finger? Is this from a palm? Is this from a foot? I then determine if there's enough information there to compare to a known print. Comparison phase is where I compare the unknown to the known. The evaluation is where I come to my conclusion of either an identification, meaning this unknown print came from the same individual who left these known prints, an elimination or not identified, meaning someone else left this unknown print. Also, I can come to a no value, which means there's just not enough there to compare to a known standard. Also, I can use an inconclusive result, which means I'm unable to come to a conclusion for a specific reason. The V then is the verification of my work by another examiner, where they do their own analysis, comparison, and evaluation.
Thank you. In the case at hand, you were provided with a number of items to make comparisons to known prints. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right. And overall, in your comparisons, were there some identifications made on some items in this case?
Yes, there were.
And for other items, was there no identification made?
Yes, there were.
Okay. All right, let's talk about, did you generate a report as a result of your work in this case?
I did.
Okay. If you wouldn't mind, do you have it in front of you?
I do.
All right. I'm going to draw your attention first to your item number 104. That is listed as a multi-tool.
Okay.
What did you learn in your comparison of the multi-tool?
So that item I chemically processed for fingerprints, and the result was no value, meaning I could tell that the item had been touched, but the overall ridge detail from the skin was either not of comparison quality or smudged or for some reason not enough to compare or not of quality to compare with a known.
So let me make sure I understand that correctly. You didn't actually take that print and compare it to Nathaniel Rowland or Samantha Josephson or anyone else because the print itself on the item was not sufficient for doing so. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Next, let's go to your items 27 and 28. I believe if you could tell us what items 27 and 28 are referring to.
Item 27 is an empty 16 fluid ounce Bud Light aluminum bottle. Item 28 is an empty 12 fluid ounce Bud Light can. Both of these items were processed for fingerprints, and for both of these items, the result was no fingerprint evidence was observed, which means there are not even smudges present on the item. It was either too covered in dirt, had been washed, or the prints just were not left in the first place. There was no ridge detail present on the item at all.
Next, I'm going to go to items 32 through 35, which, if you could tell the court about each one of those. Let's start with item 32. Is that the LA's Totally Awesome Cleaner bottle?
That is correct.
All right.
That item was chemically processed, and the result was no value.
Okay. And item 33, what was that?
The container of Clorox bleach germicidal wipes, the result for that was also no value.
34?
34 is the Dollar General Home window cleaner spray bottle, again chemically processed, and the result was no value.
All right. And then lastly, number 35.
The Top Job bleach bottle, processed for prints, and the result was no fingerprint evidence observed, meaning no portion of a print at all.
Okay. Thank you. Number 36, item 36, your item 36.
That was a set of wall hair clippers processed for fingerprints, and the result was no value for comparison.
Okay, and then in regards to items 38 and 39, if you could talk about those together.
Item 38 was 2 blue plastic gloves, and item 39 was 1 blue plastic glove. Both of those were processed, and the result for both of those was no value.
And the item 38 blue plastic glove, does your report indicate where those gloves are purported to have come from?
Said to be from the front passenger door panel.
And the same question for item 39.
39 is said to be from around the clear spray bottle in driver floorboard.
And again, your conclusion regarding those two was what?
Both of those were no value.
So can you explain to the jury, if we're talking about plastic gloves, some of the reasons why you may have reached, why there may be a situation where there's no value for comparison on gloves?
If you've worn plastic gloves for any extended period of time, you'll know that your hands will sweat. That sweat can be too much to leave a print. If you have too much moisture on your hand, then that causes the ridge detail to just appear like moisture drops, like if your car's been out in the rain. And that can obscure leaving a perfectly left print. Also, if you think about putting a glove on and the way you would take it off, you're kind of smearing it across your skin, which could obscure any perfectly laid print.
Thank you. Turn your attention now to your item 55. What is that and what did you find?
That is a latent lift indicated as coming from the rear passenger door exterior door handle, and it was no value as well.
And item 108.
That was a Family Dollar bag containing miscellaneous wipes, paper towels, and gloves. It was chemically processed and the result was no value.
Now, as you mentioned earlier, there were some items that you examined that you did make some identifications. Is that right?
That is correct.
All right. I'd like to turn your attention to item 113. Your Honor, may the witness step down?
Step down.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as states 340 for ID. If you can just look at it yourself first and describe what that is.
This is the fingerprint chart I have prepared.
In regards to item 113.
It's actually 113.1.1 with item 87.
Okay, and this chart was created in the ordinary course of business?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you. Your Honor, at this time we'd offer states 340.
No objection, Your Honor.
Now I'm going to ask you to trade places with me, if you don't mind, so that the court reporter can hear you. Do you recall, and I'm sorry, I made you abandon your report. Do you recall what item 113 is from?
Item 113 is a crime scene image that is of the rear interior window from the driver's side of the vehicle.
Okay, the rear interior window of the driver's side of the vehicle. And that was an image of that?
That is correct.
Okay.
So
All right, and the other side?
this is from my item 87, which were the post-mortem inked footprints said to be from Samantha Josephson.
All right, and so again, just by way of review, when you say known regarding Samantha Josephson's print, that is because what?
It was taken on purpose from a known individual in a controlled environment.
All right, and then unknown in regards to 113 from the window.
That was latent, otherwise known as unknown, from the scene because we don't know who left that print.
All right, now as you examined these two or compared these two to one another, what was your analysis?
So this kind of describes what I was explaining before, where we look at the overall, it's easier to see on this side, we look at the overall flow of the ridges, which on this image are the black lines. We look for agreement between the overall flow between the unknown and known prints. We then look within the flow at what the ridges are doing. We're looking for the ridge endings, the ridge bifurcations, and any dots that may be present. I first look for them in the unknown print. I'll locate kind of a focal point or a cluster of rich characteristics. And then I look for it in what should be the same area on the known print. And so that's what the letters with the red lines are pointing at, are different characteristics that I found within the print and within relation to each other that are in agreement between both the unknown and the known.
And what conclusion did you reach regarding this particular comparison of print from, the latent print from the window inside the vehicle to the known print of Ms. Josephson?
It was identified,
Meaning what?
meaning that the person who left the inked impression also left the unknown impression.
Thank you. You indicated that was your item 113.1.1.
That is correct.
Can you describe kind of generally why there would be various sub numbers of item numbers like that?
So item 113 is a DVD of crime scene images. So I had to sub-item, which is 113.1, the specific image on that entire CD or DVD of images. So 113.1 is the actual file or image 979 on the CD. And within that image, I had to then further sub-item 0.1.1, the specific impression that I'm referring to when doing my comparison.
All right, and so did you actually, for 113.1, did you actually make comparisons for, I believe, 4 different parts? Is that the right word of that?
4 different impressions represented on that same image. So item 113.1 is image 979. I then have items 113.1.1 through 113.1.4. All of those referring to different impressions within that same image.
And what were your conclusions regarding each of those impressions?
All 4 of those were identified to the footprints bearing the name Samantha Josephson.
Can you tell what part of the foot, what print that came from, say, part of the foot, the toes, anything of that nature?
Item 113.1.1, 113.1.2, 113.1.3, and 113.1.4 all came from the toes of her right foot.
Okay. And then moving to 113.2, what is that? What is the latent impression from 113.2.1?
That is also a crime scene image of the rear driver's side door window interior.
And what was your conclusion regarding that comparison?
That image had 1 impression sub-item from it. So 113.2.1 was also identified to the footprints of Samantha Josephson.
Which part of the foot made that impression?
That impression came from the heel area of her left foot.
So the previous item you said was the right foot, but this one's from the left foot, is that right?
That is correct.
And then lastly, in regards to this particular set of impressions, 113.3.
That is an additional crime scene image and had 1 impression sub-item from it. So 113.3.1 was also identified to the footprints of Samantha Josephson.
Which part of her foot?
This was the right foot plantar area, which is essentially under your smaller toes.
Thank you. All right, I'd like to turn your attention to your item 37.
Okay.
And for reference sake, I believe this states number 26 that's already in evidence as the Yankee candle bag. That's your item 37, correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you. What comparisons did you make regarding this item?
It was processed for prints. I then sub-itemed 3 impressions from that bag. So 37.3 was compared but not identified to any of the names involved in this case. Item 37.4 and 37.5 were both compared and identified to the footprints of Samantha Josephson.
Did you notate which part of her foot?
37.4 is from her right foot, toe number 1. 37.5 is also from her right foot, from the ball area below the big toe.
Turning your attention to items 128 and 131. We'll start with item 128.
Okay.
What is that item?
That is a black trash bag containing a paper towel roll, 1 Dollar General bag containing a gray bath towel, and 1 IGA bag containing a bed sheet and miscellaneous wipes.
What identifications did you make in regards to that item?
An impression was developed on the exterior of the trash bag that was identified to prints bearing the name Maria Howard. And 2 more prints also on the exterior of the black trash bag were also identified to the known prints bearing the name Maria Howard.
Okay, thank you. All right, next, your item 22. I'm going to show you what's previously been admitted into evidence as State's Exhibit 56. And can you describe, according to your report, what this is?
1 torn envelope with writing. Yes, that is it.
Okay. All right, and did you conduct a series of comparisons regarding the envelope?
Yes, I did.
All right, let's talk. There were multiple comparisons, correct?
There were 2.
Okay, let's start with item 22.4.
The impression was developed and then identified with known fingerprints bearing the name Xavier Marquise McFadden.
Okay, and then let's talk about item 22.3. Still talking about the envelope, correct?
That is correct. The fingerprint developed as item 22.3 was identified with the known standards bearing the name Nathaniel David Rowland.
All right. Now my question goes back to something we discussed a little bit earlier. Can you talk again about time frames as it relates to how fingerprints may be on an item, how long a fingerprint can stay on an item, and things of that nature?
Things such as knowing when an item was clean, knowing when an item was wiped down may help, but generally we are unable to determine when a print was left on an item.
So is it fair to say then that if I handed my paper to you and you took it back to your office and set it down on the desk, and some years later you found it and it was compared for prints of some sorts, that there'd be no way to tell when, if you found a comparison to my print, would it have been left on there?
That is correct.
Okay. All right, now I have one more item to ask you about, and that is item number 40.
That is a roll of pink duct tape.
So you say 29 is already in evidence? Is that duct tape?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And what was your analysis of the duct tape?
That was chemically processed, and 3 impressions were then sub-itemed. All of them were identified to the known fingerprints bearing the name Nathaniel David Rowland. Those prints are on the interior cardboard roll.
Not on the tape on the outside, but rather on the inside?
Correct.
Agent Mears, thank you. Those are all my questions at this time.
Thank you.
By the defense.
May it please the court, Your Honor?
Yes.
Morning.
Hi.
So when you get involved with doing your part of the forensic testing, you're not going out and getting the information. The information is the items that they want tested are sent to you.
That is correct.
And when they arrive to your department, they're usually stored in some sort of evidence bag.
That is correct.
And that's because the crime scene folks that got out there collected it. They logged it into the evidence room, and the request was put in for print comparisons.
Yes, that is correct.
And when you get the bag, the only information that you know about that item is what's on the bag, right?
They will generally write a brief description where the item is said to be from. They will notate the lab number, item number, and their initials on the bag. And then within our computer system, they will indicate what analysis or what testing they want on that item.
Okay. So when you get that turned over, you don't know and you don't have any way of determining what is important and what might not be important, right?
That's correct.
The request is made, you get the item, you do your comparison.
Correct.
And when you complete your comparison, do you upload it to y'all's internal system, the B system, I think somebody called it?
As far as my worksheets and my
Yes, ma'am.
report, yes, that is correct.
And after you upload it, it's not your responsibility to make sure that investigators get it and review it. You do your part, you upload it, and then you move on to the next case you have to work on, right?
That is correct.
And you just testified, well, when Mr. Goldberg started asking you questions, you said there were some other items that you were able to get prints off of, but you also noted that there were more potential prints, just not of the caliber for testing or comparison, right?
Right. Some of the items that I processed were no value.
And you actually noticed more ridge details on specific items, like item 22. You could tell that it had been touched more, but you were not able to do a comparison with those other areas.
That is correct.
Okay. And you testified that you can't date a fingerprint.
Right.
So if I got a piece of mail that had my car registration in it, and I picked up the envelope, opened the envelope, took my car registration out, and put that envelope somewhere, theoretically, my prints would stay on that envelope.
Theoretically, yes.
If somebody else touched the envelope and, opened it, moved it, did anything with it, and put it down, and nobody touched it again, that person's print would be there.
There's a chance, yes.
And you don't know how many different prints are on item 22, right?
No, I do not.
You are only able to get 2,
The
or to compare to.
to compare to, yes. The rest of the overall envelope had various touches across the front and the back.
And you testified that item 22.3, you identified that as being from this. Located on the back part of the envelope.
That is correct.
And again, there's all different touches throughout the envelope, but those are the 2 you were able to lift.
Process and photograph, these weren't exactly physical latent lifts. And the rest of the impressions that were noted on the item were determined to be no value. So they were not then sub-itemed for comparison.
Now in item 128.5, the black trash bag,
Yes.
do you recall, other than it saying a black trash bag, do you recall where that bag was located?
The packing slip from our computer system said that it was from a trash can with a specific ID number located in Maria Howard's backyard.
Okay. But outside of that, that's the only information that you had about this item.
That's correct.
And it was Maria Howard's fingerprints that you were able to identify on item 128.5,
Yes, that is correct.
on 128.6,
Yes.
on 128.9.
Yes.
And you also identified her print on item 131.5. What is that item?
Item 131
Yes, ma'am.
is a Family Dollar bag containing clothing. Item 131.5 is a impression I developed on the bag, and that was identified to Maria Howard.
Yes, ma'am. And does the submission that you got identify where that bag was located?
Item 131 is said to be from the trash can, and I believe it is the same ID number of the trash can.
And I'm going to hand you what's already in evidence in States Exhibit 6. That's the fingerprint card for the payroll.
Yes,
Does it have his, I guess his stats at the top of it? Height, weight?
yes, it does.
Can you please tell us what that says?
Sex is male, race is black, height is 5'8", weight is 160, eyes are brown, hair is black.
Thank you, ma'am. And your testing has nothing to do with DNA, right? That's a different department.
In my processing, I created some swabs for DNA, but then they were transferred to that department and I did no testing on them.
Begging the court's indulgence. Thank you. I have no further questions.
Any relay right?
Very briefly, Judge. Agent Mears, if someone is wearing gloves, what impact does that have on their ability to leave a latent print on an item?
You will not leave a print on an item if you have a glove blocking the moisture on the skin from the surface you are touching.
Anything further?
Agent Mears, if somebody doesn't touch an item, will they leave a print?
No, they will not.
Thank you.
You may step down. Thank you. And you may call your next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. State calls Verona Herrera.
Come forward, be sworn. Face the clerk, left hand, raise your right.
You solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this case will be the truth, no truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Please have a seat, state your full name for the record.
Step up.
My name is Verona Herrera.
Good afternoon, Ms. Herrera. Where are you currently employed,
DHEC, the Department of Health and Environmental Control for South Carolina.
and how long have you worked there?
Approximately a year and a half.
Prior to that, where did you work?
The South Carolina Law Enforcement Division.
And how long did you work there?
Approximately 11 and a half years.
And while at SLED, what did you do?
Evidence processing technician and a forensic serologist.
What is a forensic serologist?
Forensic serologist takes evidence from a crime scene and tries to identify the body fluid on the evidence. Usually it's body fluid in question, blood, semen, saliva.
And how long did you do this?
It was about 6 years that I did serology. It's a little bit unique because evidence processing became a part of serology. So evidence processing is taking those items of evidence, looking for blood stains or areas that could be semen or saliva, and doing quick color change tests, or collecting possible skin cells from areas on clothing or guns or car parts. And then the serology was additional testing to try to identify those body fluids if they were present. So I started out as evidence processing. When the serology department or duties were added to that, then I became a serologist.
And did you get any training in performing and conducting serology testing?
Through SLED, there's an in-house training program, yes, for both the evidence processing and the serology.
Can you tell the jury a little bit about your training?
I worked under a court qualified analyst, watching them process evidence. Then I started processing evidence under their supervision. I had to pass a written test, an oral test, a mock court test, and practice evidence to make sure that I could perform the duties that I was going to be performing.
And have you ever been qualified as an expert in the field of serology?
Yes, ma'am.
This time you're not asked to have Ms. Herrera qualified as an expert in the field of serology.
Any objection?
Your Honor, may we approach?
Yes. Qualified.
Thank you. So you were explaining to the jury about serology. Specifically, what are you testing for when you're doing a serology test?
It depends on the body fluid in question. If it is blood, there's a presumptive test for blood. It's a quick color change test. The area of question would be swabbed, and then chemicals applied to that swab. It would change to a bright pink color if there's a possibility blood is there. We can also go on and identify blood, not human blood, but we can say that the substance is blood by doing a further testing on that swab. Semen is similar. There's a quick color change test that you would swab the area, add the chemical, it would turn purple within a minute to indicate there's a possibility that could be semen, and it could be taken for further testing for the P30, which is a component of the liquid portion of semen, and we also looked at for sperm cells or spermatozoa under the microscope. Saliva testing is presumptive testing only from swabs or cuttings from the material. If you think say a mask, if you think there's saliva on the mask, we could cut an area of that and test it. Also, hair can be evaluated. If there's a root material on the hair, then that can be forwarded for further testing as well.
So I'm going to move you to this case. How did you become involved in the murder of Samantha Josephson?
I was assigned the case when it was submitted to the laboratory.
And so how does something get submitted to the laboratory?
The agency or our SLED's crime scene personnel would bring the evidence to the laboratory. It gets entered into the computer system, tracking system. It's given a unique lab number, and each item that's submitted is given a unique item number within that lab number.
And so when you say, are you getting the items as we see them, or do you get swabs or cuttings, or what do you receive?
Usually all of the above. I could receive swabs from other departments. It could be swabs from the actual crime scene. It could be clothing, linens, car parts, guns, just anything that's taken from the crime scene could come through the evidence processing and astrology department. Then those are narrowed down to swabs or cuttings so that they're much smaller to handle. Then those would be, anything that was positive would be forwarded on for further analysis.
So do you have your report in front of you?
I do, both of them, yes, ma'am.
So I'm going to refer you to what you have listed as item 38.1, just to give us an idea.
Yes, ma'am.
What is that particular item?
Swabs taken from the cuff area and in between the fingers of item 38.
And do you know what item 38 is?
I do not.
Okay, and that's fine. What I want to ask you about is it says item forwarded to DNA section. What does that mean?
In this case, I was compiling the evidence so that the DNA analyst could get all of it at one time. This item did not need to be tested for a body fluid, so it went straight to the DNA analyst. I never opened that item.
So if we see on here where it says item forwarded, you just send it straight on. Is that fair to say?
No, because I also put that designation on anything that I test and then send forward.
Okay. So I'm going to move to what you have listed as item 104.1.
Yes.
What is that?
Camo colored multi-tool from white plastic Family Dollar bag number 2.
And what is the result of that testing?
There was a swab from the serrated blade of the camo colored multi-tool, which is item 104.1. Presumptive testing for blood was positive, and that item was forwarded to the DNA section.
So what does it mean if it comes back as presumptive testing for positive?
So like I said, the quick color change test, where it would turn bright pink if there's a possibility blood is there, is a very sensitive test. There can be very minute amounts of blood there, and it will change color. But it's also not specific. Other chemicals in the environment or other items can cause it to turn positive. So that's considered a presumptive test for blood. There's a possibility that blood is there, but it needs further testing.
Okay, and I'm going to move on to item 106.1. What was that?
106.1 is the swab from the finger of the black right-hand glove from the white basket from the closet left of the bed in Maria Howard's bedroom, and that is 7525 Mountain Brook Drive, Unit C.
And what was the result of that test?
The presumptive test for blood was positive, and the item was forwarded to the DNA section.
And what about 107.1?
107.1 is swab of cuff of black left-hand glove from white plastic bag, Family Dollar bag number 2.
What was the result of that test?
The presumptive test for blood was positive, and the item was forwarded to the DNA section.
All right. And what about 108.3.2?
108.3.2 is cutting from 1 wad of possible paper towels from miscellaneous contents removed from bag from item 108.
And what was the results of that testing?
Presumptive testing for blood was positive, and the item was forwarded to the DNA section.
And can you tell Dre what happens do you know what happens when it's forwarded to the DNA section?
They take it through the process to develop the DNA profile, which they compare to a known standard.
So you don't do that. That's someone else's job, fair to say?
Correct, yes.
So item 108.3.4, is that still we're still talking about the glove?
Yes, that is a swab from the entire exterior as it was submitted of 3 gloves from miscellaneous contents removed from bag from item 108.
And on all of those items, what was the result?
Presumptive testing for blood was positive, and the items were forwarded to the DNA section.
And for item 125.1,
A swab from the sole of the right shoe of pair of pink Adidas size 9K shoes from closet underneath the stairs from Maria Howard's resident was presumptive testing for blood was positive, and then the item was forwarded to the DNA section.
right? And 127, what was the result of that?
Gray pillowcase from pillow from right side of bed, interiors by design from Maria Howard's bedroom. Presumptive testing for blood was negative.
So that means it wasn't blood?
The presumptive test was negative. I can't say absolute certainty it was not blood, but it is not likely to be blood.
And is that common or uncommon?
It is fairly common, yes, ma'am.
What about 128.1.1?
Cutting from the towel from miscellaneous contents removed from bags of item 128. The presumptive test for blood was positive, and the item was forwarded to the DNA section.
And 128.1.2?
That's a cutting from the pillowcase from the miscellaneous contents removed from bags of item 128. Presumptive testing for blood was positive, and the item was forwarded to the DNA section.
And I'm going to move on to item 130.1.1. What is that?
Cutting from the left side hem area of tan shirt removed from item 130.
And what's item 130?
I do not know.
Well, what is 130.1?
That is the tan shirt.
Okay, so this is, and then there's 130.1.1 is a cutting from that?
That is correct, yes.
Okay. And what was the result of that?
Presumptive testing for blood was positive, and it was forwarded to the DNA section.
And how about 131.1.1.1?
Point 1.1.1. Cutting from right cuff of shirt.
Yes, what was the result of that?
Presumptive test for blood was positive, and the item was forwarded to the DNA section.
And how about, so here we have 131.1.2. What item is that from?
131.1.2 is the pants that were removed from item 131.
All right, and what was the result of the testing of that cutting?
The testing of 131.1.2.1 is the cutting from the right thigh area of the pants removed from item 131. That is a presumptive test was positive, or for blood was positive, and the item was forwarded to the DNA section.
Okay. Now I'm going to move to your next report.
Okay.
All right. There you have item 22.1.
Yes, ma'am.
You see that? What is that item?
That is a swab taken from below address window on item 22.
And what was the result of that test?
Presumptive testing for blood was positive, and the item was forwarded to the DNA section.
And now I'm going to move to item 45.1. That is a swab, correct?
Correct.
And what did that swab come from?
The swab was from the right sleeve near the cuff of a black jacket, Robert Comstock, size XL, from rear passenger seat of Chevy Impala.
And what was the result of that test?
Presumptive test for blood was positive, and the item was forwarded to the DNA section.
And that the only swab, or are there several swabs from that particular item?
There were 2 other swabs from that particular item.
And want to move on to 49.
The multicolored shirt from Nathaniel Rowland.
And that's one of those that tested negative, correct?
That is correct.
And does that mean that there's no blood anywhere, or just on the item that you tested?
You mean there's no blood anywhere on the shirt?
Correct.
I would have looked the entire shirt inside and out to see if there were any visual spots that appeared to be blood stains and tested those, and all of those tested negative.
And that would be different from item 50.1, correct?
That is correct.
And what was item 50?
Item 50 is a pair of black socks from Nathaniel Rowland.
And what was the result of that test?
The cutting from the heel area of the pair of black socks from Nathaniel Rowland is 50.1, and the presumptive testing for blood was positive, and the item was forwarded to the DNA section.
And what about item 51.1?
That is a cutting from the right shoulder area of gray Puma hoodie from Nathaniel Rowland, and presumptive testing for blood was positive, and the item was forwarded to the DNA section.
And how about item 54.1.1?
54.1.1 is a cutting from the from Bandana, from Nathaniel Rowland, and presumptive testing for blood was positive, and the item was forwarded to DNA section.
Want to move your attention to the 128.3.
128.3 swabs taken from interior or Dollar General bag from item 128. Presumptive test for blood was positive, and the item was forwarded to DNA section.
What about 128.4?
128.4 were swabs from the interior of IGA bag from item 128. Presumptive test for blood was positive, and the item was forwarded to DNA section.
In item 130.3,
130.3 are swabs taken from along open edge of item 130. Presumptive testing for blood was positive, and the item was forwarded to the DNA section.
what about 130.4?
130.4 is swabs taken from the interior of cardboard roll from item 130. Presumptive testing for blood was positive, and the item was forwarded to the DNA section.
And there was also hair collected on your report, correct?
I do believe there was, yes, ma'am.
And is it your job to test the hair, or does that go to somebody else?
I evaluate the hair to see if a root is present because SLED's DNA analysis will only work on root material on hair. And if the root material is present, then the hair is forwarded on for further testing. If root material is not present, then it is not sent for further testing.
Beg the court's indulgence. No further questions this time around.
By the defense.
Please, Court, Your Honor.
Yes. Yes.
I'm well, and you?
Good. It's gonna be very brief. You said that some of the items that were originally submitted to you, you did not do any sort of presumptive test on.
There are some, yes, ma'am.
Okay, you went ahead and just forwarded that on to DNA.
That is correct.
And you yourself don't do any sort of DNA processing or comparisons?
I don't do the developing of the DNA profile or the comparison, no, ma'am.
And I believe Ms. Sampson asked you about one of the swabs you took from a black jacket. But you swabbed that jacket more than once, right?
Yes, ma'am. Do you know the item number for that?
I believe it's 45. Yeah. 45, item 45. I have it on page 2.
Okay. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. There were 3 swabs taken from that jacket.
One was near the cuff.
45.1 was the right sleeve near the cuff of the black jacket.
45.2 is the upper right and lower left area of the black jacket.
That is correct.
And then 45.3 was the interior neck area of that black jacket.
It's a swab from scraping the interior neck area of the black jacket.
What does that mean?
That means that we take a piece of, it's a sterile plastic single-use scraper and scrape areas that potentially touch someone's body as they're wearing the item, try to determine who was wearing the item. So the neck area of that jacket was scraped in an attempt to collect skin cells of the person that may have been wearing it.
Begging the court's indulgence.
Redirect.
No, sir.
Thank you. You may step down. Do you have a 10-minute witness?
No, sir.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we will break for lunch. And we will come back at 2:15. 2:15. Please do not discuss the case.